District 1's candidates forum tonight. I hope you're rested and ready for a great evening. So first, I'm Ron Wu, and I have the pleasure of being tonight's convener and moderator. Before we begin, I'd like to have Reverend Sang, the president of the Chinese Community Consolidated Association, who's hosting tonight's event, to give a few words. Mr. Sang.
First of all, welcome to the CCBA. We've been established since 1883, and as you can tell, we're big supporters of democracy. And we're happy to have this forum here where our candidates get to share their perspectives so that we can choose the best candidate based on how they answer the questions tonight, hopefully. So, once again, like UA3 has been a great partner. We've done this, this is our second year in a row. I guess second year? We did this last year, or did
you did it last year.
Yeah, I get confused sometimes, but yeah, so we're happy to have UA3 here. They've been doing the grunt work. They did pretty much everything. We just provided the space, so very appreciative of them putting this together. And they're going to keep up the great work, and thank you for all the partners that were taking part of this as well, so thank you.
For being a great host. Next, I'd like to introduce our sponsor for tonight's event, Mr. Don Hong, President and Chairperson of UA3.
Thank you, Mr. Ron. Mr. Ron Wu. His wife sits on our UA3 board. She's the former principal of PS 130. It's okay, Ron. Everybody knows me as Norma's son. So. But he's an incredible, he's a professor at NYU. I believe he has a long history with CUNY as well. So we thank you, Ron, for hosting tonight's, moderating tonight's. CCBA, very modest. They do a lot more than just host this. They do events throughout the year. They're an incredible organization, and I'm glad to be in partnership with them. Chiluk and the rest of the UA3, I can't thank you enough. Tonight would not be possible without Con Edison. They funded our last year's forum, and they funded this year as well. So, without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Ron. Let's get going.
Okay, well, great. First, let me, as you can see, our candidates are sitting before you. At the far end of the table is Mr. Chris Marte, followed by Ms. Susan Lee in the middle, and Ursila, Jung here right next to me. Their positions on this stage was predetermined coming in. They agreed to be sitting positions, so it was not because we have any kind of animosity for Mr. Marte and stuck him at the end. Okay, so just to have you know that before we begin. Okay. So before we begin, I think it's always important for everybody to understand what the rules of the game are. So tonight we're going to have each of the candidates start with a 2-minute introduction of themselves. It's only fair that they know themselves better than anybody else, right? So we'll let them talk. Okay, after the introductions, the candidates will be asked to respond to a series of questions. These questions were generated by input from the community and the various different organizations that have come to UA3 with their questions. Following that, each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to each of those questions. And after the question and answer period for the questions that we have that were formally asked, each of the candidates will have an opportunity to ask their fellow candidates a question for which they have 2 minutes to respond. I assume these are questions that are not going to be greatly personal in nature, right, folks? Great, thank you. Okay, and if time permits, we'll have a lightning round of yes/no questions. That again is dependent on how much time we have. Because we had so many questions, it was very difficult to fine-tune our questions to the few that they're able to answer extensively. Okay, before we begin, after that, there'll be an opportunity for each of the candidates to provide a closing statement. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce Mr. Chiluk, who's sitting right here in the first row. He has been voluntold to be timekeeper for this evening's event. Mr. Locke will show each of the candidates a 30-second or 15-second that will show them that they have a limited amount of time left, and at the end of their 2-minute response period, he will ring a bell. Thank you. Okay. If we should go over time as moderator, I have the unfortunate position of telling you that your time has expired, and we've got to move on. I apologize to you beforehand if I appear to be rude, but yes, I will be rude. Okay. So, from the candidates, any questions about the rules before we begin? No, we're good? Okay, so let's start the questions and answers. Our first question this evening is to Jen.
Intro.
Oh, I'm sorry, your 2-minute introductions. I'm ahead of myself, right? Okay, we'll start at the end. We'll start with Mr. Marte.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your day to be here today. 2 years ago, I won an election where we got more votes than the second and third candidates. This gave me and my office a mandate to fight for the issues that are desperately critical to our community: housing, gentrification, and anti-displacement. To make sure that our voices are heard in every single fight, whether it's fighting the mega jail to making sure that constituents have a voice when they're pushing back against their landlord. And finally, people were really concerned about our quality of life. This regards outdoor dining or sanitation. And each one of these things we have been able to tackle heads on. And in just a year, we still don't have a jail bill, while in 4 other boroughs, they're in the construction phase. We have expanded street cleaning throughout our district, and Delancey Street, Mulberry Street, Little Italy, Chinatown are cleaner than ever before. And when it comes to housing, we not only build true 100% affordable housing, but we even make sure that tenants can remain and age in place. Working with our CBOs and community activists, we've been able to give this community a voice in City Hall. And of course, there's a long list of other things that we've been able to achieve that we'll go into more detail later today. But I really want to thank UA3, Raymond Zhang, and the whole CCBA family for allowing us to have democracy in action here today, this evening. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Marte. Our next speaker is
Good evening, everyone. It is so good to be here tonight. I want to thank UA3 for hosting this, CCBA for having us here. A year ago, we were in this room fighting against a low-threshold shelter here at 231 Grand Street, and I am so happy to be here amongst my friends here. My name is Susan Lee. I'm a candidate for City Council here in District 1 in Lower Manhattan. I am a daughter of immigrant parents who came to the United States at the age of 6. I grew up in the Lower East Side. My parents was seamstress and a sample maker who instilled in me the value of education and how it is a pathway to success. I have dedicated a large amount of my career to helping those who are in need. I am a nonprofit executive who founded numerous nonprofit organizations, and to this day, many of them are still helping and serving the community. My latest accomplishment was finding SDR Park Alliance, which received $3.5 million grant for the Downtown Revitalization Initiative for Sarah Z. Rosa Park, which is an extension of our home. As a longtime resident of the city, I am a champion for common sense and liberal policies. I hope to achieve expand public education for those in need, prioritize public safety by getting illegal guns off the street, prosecute hate crimes, and additionally have equitable policing policies. Lastly, I want to make housing affordable and invest in economic development. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me here. I wore red as my celebratory color to be here. My name is Ursila Jung, and I'm also a candidate for City Council, which you all know. And I am here and I'm running because I am passionate about representative democracy. And that means that we all need to take collective ownership and we all need to participate. And this group obviously is here because you want to learn more about the candidates, but we know, especially you guys, we know what abysmal voter turnouts we see for local city elections and what problem we have. And I think this is because a lot of us feel left out of the political process. We feel that the voices who are very extreme are the loudest, and moderates, which is most of us, quite honestly, who want common sense policies, are just left out of the conversation. And I really want to run this campaign to inspire people to say, we should take ownership, we can vote, this is the only way we can do it. And I know this is possible because look at how amazing this country is. I do not know of a single other country where a person like me, I look different, I sound different. You know, I was born in a city 7,500 miles away, and I'm standing here thinking, I have a real shot at this. I mean, that is amazing. That's the power of this country, and I don't want us to be losing hope about it. But I know that we have very many complex issues. We have public safety issues, we need better schools, we need to support our small businesses, we have issues to deal with the underlying causes of homelessness, and we need to make tough decisions. So I just want to say that I hope everybody here leaves the room and tells 10 more people to vote. Whoever they vote for, just tell them to vote. That's my message for today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Tan. Thank you, candidates. And now begins our formal round of formal questions. Our first question for this evening is, two general positions have been formed around how to deter criminal behavior and promote public safety. One is about supporting more social services, and one is about holding criminals accountable. Acknowledging that there are limited resources, which position did you take and support and why? And we'll start with Mr. Marte.
Thank you for that question. I think the way the question is phrased is actually the problem. Why do we have to pit over one thing against another, right? I think investment is critical when it comes to deterring crime. Investing in our schools, investing in our health infrastructure, investing in our CBOs that do an amazing work. One of the sponsors here tonight is Hamilton Madison, and the work that they do when it comes to mental illness is preventing future crimes. And so I don't see, even with limited resources, and actually it isn't too limited when you have a city budget that's $105 billion. We have enough money in this city to prevent crime. And I am not taking away if someone does a criminal act. You know, my office has been working with local precincts to investigate these crimes to follow up. But one thing that's forgotten through these debates is the actual victims. You know, when there is a criminal act happening in our district, our office has not only been there the day of the crime, but has worked with the trauma, working to deter the trauma from these victims who have nowhere else to go. My office has been able to relocate people in new housing, have been able to find people free social service programs to make sure that they don't live with what happened to them that one day for the rest of their lives. And so I think it's not choosing one or the other. This is a multifaceted approach to not only prevent crime, but to also deal with what happens after the crime is committed. And that's what my office has been doing this first year, and that's what we will continue to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marte. Ms. Lee.
I think that it's a false narrative. We can have both. My approach is holistic policing, where we have community policing, where local precincts work with residents in the area to understand really what the concerns are. I know that we are right now, the city is in a mental health crisis, and we need to invest more additional capital into solving that mental health issue so that the most vulnerable among us are served. We must prosecute crime to the fullest extent, be it getting illegal guns off the street or hate crime. I think that it is really important and it is really critical that we address these issues. We cannot criminalize mental illness. That is not what we should do. But at the same time, we need to also understand that we have victims that we need to support. I've attended many precinct council meetings and I've heard with my own ears that people are scared. They do not feel safe. And so we must do everything within our power to make our community feel safe. Crime in the 5th precinct has increased by 16% year to date. We must work with local CBOs, clergy, and also human service agencies to address the root cause of these crimes and mental health issues.
I'm going to keep sitting, if that's okay with everyone. I think that when executed thoughtfully, social services can actually lead to a reduction in crime. So for example, when we see homeless New Yorkers, if they are provided access to affordable housing, proper shelter or housing alternatives, and we can ensure that people with mental health issues get what they require in a timely and consistent manner, then we can reduce these incidents that we're seeing on the street, like this horrible situation in the subway with Jordan Lee. But I do believe that the NYPD needs to be fully funded, and we have to ensure that they are supported by social services so that they are not forced to do jobs like respond to mental health crises, which they're not trained to do, and that's not in their wheelhouse. I think when Mayor de Blasio took over, he inherited a system with a very low crime rate, and he could afford to move money away from the NYPD. That is not our reality today. We cannot afford to continue to do this. So I think especially with the rise in racist incidents, petty crime, which affects small businesses, we certainly need NYPD to be fully funded.
Thank you, Ms. Kemp. Our second question for this evening is, how would the City Council work with community-based organizations to provide after-school programs that would support the academic success of students in our under-resourced neighborhoods? And we will start with Ms. Lee this time.
As a child of immigrants, I know how important quality education is. It is a pathway to success for many immigrants and working class families. I understand that there are rigorous and challenging education that can propel us to the ever-changing world. I know intimately that after-school program helps because I'm a volunteer at a place for kids where we provide homework help for children in 3rd and 4th grade. Most of these children come from homes where parents are working long hours and they cannot provide the much needed resources to help them with their homework. That is where nonprofit, NGO, community-based organization after-school program plays a vital role. And I see that in the students that I help every Wednesday. It isn't lost on me that these children are coming from homes where English is their second language. So it is really important for those of us in the community to pitch in. We can't do this alone. But I also understand that other extracurricular activities is vitally important, such as programs that are called Dial the Teacher, or Braves the Bully, or Broadway Bridges. These are extracurricular activities that are important to help us form well-rounded students. Oftentimes we focus too much on academics and we forget about the arts. And I think that it is really important that we focus on the arts and other extracurricular activities. Additionally, I think we need to provide more funding for summer school, for summer job programs, mentoring programs, expand library hours, because I myself use the library often as a child.
Thank you, Ms. Jung.
So we know that high quality, affordable childcare helps parents pursue careers and educational opportunities while ensuring that their children are in a safe space. The lack of childcare in this country and in this city has held back too many for too long and has real economic consequences on the United States. As you know, the city passed a comprehensive childcare package for universal childcare last year, which will start getting rolled out in the summer. And I'm cautiously optimistic that it will be easily available in places where we have historically had a shortage of such facilities. But we also need to look at the delayed payments from the city for existing programs that have been running in the past year. We know that many programs have been forced to close down because of bottlenecks in payments. And I wish that this had been looked at more carefully so that we weren't reinventing the wheel again and again, which I feel we spend a lot of time and money doing in government. And I also want to point out that as a parent, quality is as important as quantity. I don't want to just park my son somewhere and go. I want to know that he's looked after, that these are pre-K and childcare centers. It's not about education, but they need to be safe. It needs to be a healthy and loving environment where they can thrive. And we have to make sure that when these centers open, they do not shortchange the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jung. Mr. Marte, would you like me to repeat the question?
Sure. The question was, how could the city council work with community-based organizations to provide after-school programs that would support the academic success of students in our under-resourced neighborhoods?
Thank you for that. One of the most things that I'm proudest about what we were able to achieve this year is to make sure that every single public school in our district, no matter if you live in Tribeca, Chinatown, on the Lower East Side, is to have an after-school program. And the after-school program we've been able to offer is extremely diverse, from swimming classes to chess classes to arts and music, and given by experts. We've been able to partner with organizations like Third Street Music School, with University Settlement, to make sure that people are getting services to expand their minds, right? Not just to learn math, reading, and science, which are crucial, but to also give opportunity for kids who want to express themselves and learn in a different manner. And so, something that my office has done has already changed the lives of thousands of kids in our classrooms, but we have to go much, much further. You know, we increased the budget for summer youth employment program, and so now we're employing more youths this upcoming summer than ever before, but there are still kids in our city that don't have employment opportunities. There are still kids that might not know about these after-school programs. And so it's our job to not only fund these programs, but also to do the outreach in places where people don't get that attention. And that's what we've been committed to doing, whether it's flying or door knocking or going to where people are at. And that's what we have to continue to do to make sure everyone can take advantage of these opportunities.
Thank you, Mr. Marte. Our third question for tonight is, how would you leverage your position on the City Council to support the economic development and prosperity of the small businesses in this district? And we will start with Ms. Jung.
One of my favorite American expressions is mom and pop shops. I love it. It's cute, it's funny, it's, kind of tells you what it is. But I also love how these are such an important part of the American economy. And they're a vital engine supporting the economy, but in New York City, they have an additional benefit and role of making up the unique characteristic of New York City. I mean, nobody comes here and walks around looking for a Target. I mean, I love a Target, don't get me wrong, but that's not what makes us New York. And I think that COVID has been very difficult for many of these businesses, especially in this part of town. Before looking at economic support, we have to look at how much racism some restaurants and stores in this part of town have faced. We have to look at petty crime across our district and across the city that has forced businesses to shut down because it's not viable for them to stay open anymore. And we really need to address these issues so that businesses can stop worrying about safety and security and really just get on with the business of business. I would love to see the city's Small Business Development Bureau be a one-stop shop to smooth out the functionings and workings for these small businesses. And I hope we can get them all opened again, because what is New York without these guys? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jung. Mr. Marte.
When my family came here, my dad used all the resources that he had to open up a bodega. It was a thriving bodega until his landlord decided to raise the rent and he was priced out. Right now, whether you live in the Lower East Side or Chinatown, all these small business owners are facing this threat. And so what has my office has done? We brought the Small Business Service Commissioner, Commissioner Kidd, to do a walkthrough around Chinatown and the Lower East Side to meet face-to-face with these business owners to understand that threat and other threat that they're experiencing. We joined the mayor in his press conference at the Pearl River Mart when he actually created the task force to create the portal that Ursula was talking about, to have a one-stop shop. Because it is hard to not only have the money to open up a shop, but the time it takes to turn on the lights. I know Con Edison is one of our sponsors tonight, so I won't attack them. But it does take, on average, it takes a small business owners 2 years from once they get the lease to be fully operating. And this portal, this one-stop shop, is going to help minimize that to hopefully 3 months. And that's our goal. So it's not only supporting long-term tenants and making sure that we can stop property taxes or speculation, but it's also making sure that the people who are making the decisions, the commissioners, come to our businesses, understands the pressure that these individual people are having, and making sure that we can support them. In addition, we've been able to support nonprofits like Welcome to Chinatown to help these businesses not only digitalize and go online for the first time ever, but to also give them the cash infusion that they need to recover from the pandemic. So we've been able to tackle this head on in just our first year, and we're excited to continue to do more.
Do you need me to repeat the question?
No, I don't. Thank you,
Great.
Mr. Rowe. That is an excellent question. And so, just want to say, in 2003, I joined AFI CDF, and I knew firsthand, working with them through Renaissance, they were able to inject much needed capital into the small businesses in our community. And I know how important it is because oftentimes marginalized communities do not get the resources or the funding they need to start their small businesses. So from that experience, I learned how important it is. But also I saw firsthand what happened with COVID. Our stores, our restaurants were closed early, and they still are today. I have a friend who said to me 3 days ago, Susan, I can't even get a bottle of seltzer water at 7:30 in the evening because the supermarkets are closed. When you have an environment where people and restaurants and stores are closed early because 1, they don't feel safe, 2, they don't want their workers to take the train at night, 3, because of that perception of unsafeness, people are not coming to Chinatown and the Lower East Side community, that's hurting the economy, the overall economy. So when the mayor says, public safety is the prerequisite for economic recovery, I strongly support that. And that is why it is vitally important that we have addressed public safety. I'm happy that I would like to work and collaborate with nonprofits in the future to inject much needed capital into our local economy so that the small businesses, the ones that Ursula called mom and pop businesses, can thrive because they are truly the fabric of our community.
Our fourth question for this evening is, how would you, as a council member, help to ensure that funding given to NYCHA by the city council will be used as it's intended? And we will start with Mr. Marte.
This one is really close to my heart. we have been able this first year to give historically high levels to public housing, more than has been received from previous council members. But it is troubling once you give the money to NYCHA and see how long they take to actually use it. We're able to give $2 million to Sewer Park Extension. And when I asked them when the project is going to be completed, they said maybe in 5 or 6 years. That is ridiculous. We're talking about fixing doors, fixing playgrounds, making sure that people can enter their buildings safely. And it's crazy that our system is that it takes longer to fight for them, it takes longer to repair it than what it took to fight for it. One example is, I know we have the president, the TA president, Aisha Torres from the Smith Houses. We were able to give them $800,000 just to put fobs on every single door so people can enter their doors safely and it will limit the opportunity for someone to break it. NYCHA told me we can't complete it unless you want to do it in a phased-in approach, which could probably take on the course almost a decade. These are the examples that we're facing almost every single year as we continue to invest more money into NYCHA. And this is why a lot of council members choose not to, because they feel like, how are we going to be able to keep these agencies accountable if we can never see these projects actually done? And that's why my office has not only decided to continue to invest this, but put pressure on them. Every month we call NYCHA to say, can you give us an update on those doors to the Smiths? Can we do a walkthrough around Sewer Park Extension to see the new designs of the playground? We've been able to force their consultants to meet with actual tenants to not only build these projects, but build something that will be used by the residents. And so we are committed to funding NYCHA, but making sure that they use the money accordingly and timely. Thank you.
Ms. Lee?
Growing up in a rent-regulated apartment in Los Aida, I understand how important it is to have a safe home. A home where I can count on for it being lead-free and asbestos-free. I support fully funding NYCHA, but also at the same time, we need to hold them accountable. I think that it is important for City Council to have an oversight to see what is going on in NYCHA. Having the boiler fixed is important. Having lead-free apartment is important. Having asbestos-free apartment is important. But also at the same time, having working elevators is important. Oftentimes, seniors are trapped in their apartments because they cannot access the elevator because it's non-functional. Or sometimes the heat or the electricity is not working properly. I think it is important for City Council to provide oversight and to make sure that NYCHA is held accountable and they're doing what they are supposed to do for the community.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. Do you need me to repeat the question? Okay.
So thank you to the City Council for finally fully funding NYCHA and having this oversight of this bigger agency that is creatively taking care of stuff. That's much appreciated. But with the history that NYCHA has and what we have seen over the years, I think it's only fair to say that many of us are still suspicious of how that whole program will play out and what will happen. I do think that it's important to fully fund them, but I think oversight of how that money is spent, because what you're describing, Chris, is so egregious, it's unbelievable. So clearly some sort of ombudsman is needed. That this agency has been created, which they say will be staffed with 50 people, and there's a land lease system that's been set up. I live in a part of town that's on a land lease, Battery Park City, and it hasn't been going very well, so I'm very suspect of NYCHA. And I think that to deal with affordable housing, we actually really need to realistically look beyond NYCHA. We need to, in the short term, look at adaptive housing, use vacant and underused office spaces. We need to be fixing old buildings. We need to bring them up to code. In this part of town, we know that that's a huge problem with buildings not being up to code. We need housing tax credits to be extended beyond the current phase out. We need more programs like the Rebuild Chinatown initiative. And currently there's no income requirements attached to rent-regulated affordable housing, which has to be remedied. But really long term, we live on an island. We can only build up. We have to build. If we want affordable housing, we really need to build more. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jung. Our fifth question for this evening is, how would you what is your vision for supporting affordable childcare for working families in our district? And we'll start with Ms. Lee.
Sorry, did you say childcare?
Childcare, yes.
I think we covered that question.
No.
That was daycare.
Yeah, okay. So, excuse me, I'm sorry.
The question was, what is your vision for supporting affordable childcare for the working families in our district?
Coming from a multi-generational household, I've been very fortunate where my grandma provided after school childcare for my family. But I know that not everyone is as fortunate as I am. And as a woman, I know that it is really important for us to have childcare so that we can enter the workforce. There oftentimes, when it's left alone to care for a child, it often falls on the woman. And I think it is really important to support these childcare initiatives in our community so that women can enter the workforce. It is not just an issue of economics, it's also an issue of women empowerment, but also at the same time, it helps provide a role model for their children so that they see that women in the workforce. I think that it is really, really important for us to think about the work that we as women do at home that are considered non-paid. It is really important for us to value that work. And I think that we need to go beyond the traditional 8 to 6 childcare, because a lot of our care providers are frontline workers. They might need to stay at work past 6 o'clock. So we need to think outside of the box and be creative and perhaps offer childcare that is beyond 6 o'clock, perhaps 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, or 10 o'clock. But I think that at the end of the day, we need to provide childcare so that we have more women able to enter the workforce if they choose to.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. Ms. Jung.
This question is very dear to me because I'm one of those mothers who actually could work because I felt that the childcare options available to me were not adequate. I had come to this country as a student. I mean, all I had to fall back on was my education and the job that I could get. I did not have family support, and I felt like my only option was to stay home while my husband worked. And it really does set you back for life. You take a year out, you take 2 years out, you take 4 years out, it sets you back disproportionately. You're not set back just a year. And this is a real issue we have. We are holding our women back, we're holding families back, quite frankly, because we can all do better. And which is not to say that women shouldn't stay at home. We need to offer them the alternatives and the options to make this choice freely and comfortably. And after school needs to be starting at a young age so that we can put children at 3 months, 6 months, whatever parents need to do and feel comfortable doing in a safe environment, all the way through to providing after school for middle schoolers and high schoolers, which can transition into homework help or academic preparation, because we know that those sort of programs really reduce the gap between undersourced communities and upper middle class communities. So just to give everybody a leg up, these programs need to be from birth through to high school, even though obviously the formula will change. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jung. Mr. Marte.
As a kid, every day after school, I would go to University Settlement to have their vast amount of after-school programs that they're able to give low-income kids throughout New York City, especially in our community. But most kids didn't have that opportunity. And that's why I was really excited to pass a landmark legislation with my colleagues this past year, which is called the Universal Child Care Act, to make sure that every single person has the access, the knowledge, and the availability to have that child care. And because if you think about it, it's not only about the kids having the opportunity to go somewhere and continue to learn and be cared for, but there was 375,000 women who had to make a decision whether to stay in their job or care for their kids. This is going to give hundreds and thousands of people the opportunity to continue in their careers and not pit jobs versus education, not pit life goals with safety of their children. And so that's what we've been able to do in this city council, and that's what we need to continue to build on to make sure that we continue to give the support to people who are working, but also the care to the kids that need it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marte. Our final formal question for this evening is a rather long one, so bear with me. Since 2020, there have been 4 devastating building fires in the heart of Chinatown. 70 Mulberry Street on January 2020, 78 Mulberry Street on April 2022, that killed a mother and her son. Dim Sum Palace on Chatham Square in May of 2022, and again this past March at 47 Mott Street. What would you propose to the City Council to prevent disasters like these from occurring again in the future? And we will start with Ms. Jung.
Thank you. I think this is closely related to talking about housing being up to code, which I was mentioning just a few minutes ago. And I think that it is part of town, given the large number of non-English speakers and recent immigrants. We know that these groups are taken advantage of. Housing, healthcare, and fire code regulations are flouted by landlords on a regular basis. Some tenants report code violations which range from overcrowding to lack of heat or poor sanitation, but they do have language barriers, they are intimidated by the red tape, and just plain simple fear. And many of these problems, best case, are reported to landlords, and worst case are not reported at all until another tragedy occurs and brings them to our attention. We know that there are apartments that are illegally subdivided, and that too many tenants are afraid to complain because they're insecure about their living situation. Having some sort of a roof over your head is better than none. These are all very complex problems, and it is not directly linked to a fire, except that, there's no way we can move everybody out and redo everything, and there is only one solution. We need to build more affordable housing in this city. We don't have enough. We have people who are crowded, we have people who are uncomfortable, we have people who are housing insecure constantly. We need to have more housing.
Thank you, Ms. Jung. Mr. Marte.
Each one of these fires, me and my office were on the ground being there for these tenants. 3 days after, when Red Cross no longer provided housing, we were there to make sure that we can find them temporary housing, make sure that they were able to get the services that they need. 4 or 5 months after the fire, we were able to provide oversight to the landlords to make sure they can do the jobs that they need to make sure that these tenants can come back home. Sometimes it was easy, and sometimes the landlord worked with us. Other times, we had to teach the tenants how to file HP actions to make sure that they can actually get back home. The most recent fire, the one in Lansing, we worked with the president, Kenny, with Jackie Wong, who's the building manager, and every single step of the way, my office was there. And not only to support them and the tenants, but to make sure that we have oversight and accountability for these agencies. Sometimes the Department of Building doesn't give you the permit immediately. Sometimes it takes inspectors time to go in. We work with Jackie on a weekly basis to see when they filed the paperwork, when the permit was approved. We followed up with the tenants to make sure that they knew what was happening to their belongings and to their home. And our job has been to make sure that these people who literally have lost everything, to give them the guarantee that they can come back home and continue their lives.
So I was actually there during the Lansing fire, and after the cameras were gone, Seniors needed language access. No one was able to provide translation services for them, and I was there to help. And so I helped 2 senior families with their luggage. They went up to their apartment, they grabbed their belongings. They didn't know where the Red Cross bus was picking them up. I had to bring them to the Red Cross bus. When they got to Red Cross Hotel, they had to call me. And they had to explain to them what was going on. Now, I think that it's really important to have language access in our community. But also at the same time, I think we need to recognize that a lot of these seniors are trapped in these apartments because of mobility issues. And those are my concern is, what if a fire broke out and they can't escape? So what I think is really important when we think about fire safety is, we live in one of the oldest districts in the city. The electricals are really old. It cannot carry the load of the current electric capacity that we're using. We're plugging in multiple devices. So what I suggest we do is, 1, work with the fire department and inspect the buildings to make sure that the electricals are up to code. 2, provide resources that can help these small businesses, small landlords bring their buildings up to code. I think that an ounce of prevention is worth its weight in gold. We need to start reacting. We need to start being proactive instead of reactive and tackle these issues head on before another fire breaks out in our community.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. Thank you, candidates. This ends the round of formal questions for the night. Take a deep breath. Your next task is to think about a question to ask one of your fellow candidates. And you will be recognized by whoever's hand goes up first. So think about it and be prepared to raise your hands. Mr. Marte, and to whom are you addressing this question?
My question is to Ursula Jung. Thank you for being the only other candidate to be at the rally to support home attendance to end a 24-hour shift. Right now in New York City, immigrant women of colors are working for 24 hours and only getting 13 hours of pay. And so I really want to thank Ursula for being there, but I also want you to explain why you're there and what does it mean to you.
So, it is possible to hold 2 disparate ideas in your head at the same time. So, yesterday, I wished my high schooler could go to bed, but I knew he had to study and stay up late for his test. It's possible. In the same way, I can agree with some stuff you do and disagree with other stuff. On the home healthcare workers, I think 100% that's a really important legislation. What we're doing with these women is human rights abuse. And I appreciate your resolution, and I was happy to be there to support it, and I was happy to be there to support the thousands of home healthcare workers, more than that, who perhaps all of us will need someday. So thank you.
And who is the next questioner?
I'll ask.
Ms. Lee.
Okay, this question is for Chris. Both the reality of crime and the fear of crime are on the rise, particularly in Chinatown, which has seen an appalling rise of hate crime amid Asian American communities. Constituents are crying out for more protection from police, yet you reaffirm your membership to the Progressive Caucus by pledging to support to reduce the size and scope of the NYPD, even as 10 of your colleagues withdrew from the caucus over this very issue. What do you say to constituents who are concerned about crime? Are they willing to call for more policing? Do you answer to the Progressive Caucus or to your constituents?
My constituents are the ones that elected me and to represent them and to fight for them. And that's what I'm committed to doing every single moment. We had a conversation earlier from a question of what I thought it was wrong of pitting whether you should criminalize an offense or invest in your community. And that's what progress is all about, and that's what the Progress Caucus stands for. It's about how do we not repeat the same mistakes that we've done in the past that led us to this current moment. And that means investment. And so when the mayor wants to cut $1 billion from our Department of Education, when he wants to slash the budget of our New York City public libraries, how many people here go to Chatham Library on Sundays and see it packed? I'm going to be fighting for that because I know that opportunity, that Sunday hour reading for kids is going to help them to hopefully not commit crimes in the future. And so when you think about what we're fighting for an equitable, just budget in the Progressive Caucus, and that means investing in these things that are going to make our community better. So I don't see it as, are you for one thing or against another, right? We have to work together to make our city better. We live here because we love the beauty, we love the diversity, we love the characters. And there's a lot of characters in this room. I see a few of them from Little Italy and here from the Lower East Side of Chinatown. But we're fighting so that we can all continue to live here. And the only way we achieve that is by continuing to invest in our people, in our neighborhoods, in our community. Thank you.
And the last question goes to Ms. Jung.
Thank you. Chris, since you are the sitting council person, you get all the questions. My question is around the jail, which you have been working very hard with many people in this room and in this community to stop. And there was a pause, and then there wasn't, and now there is. Do you think that if you had a less antagonistic relationship with the mayor's office, it could have gone smoother? Because we have seen in other boroughs, like with the Amazon situation in Long Island City, you know, council members have been able to work to permanently put an end to that conversation. We seem to just be in this state of limbo about it.
The difference between the Amazon and where we're at with the jail was that was in the middle of rezoning. That happened in 2018 when members of this community, myself, as a leader and founder of Neighbors United Below Canal, who have been fighting the fight against the jail, asked our council member at that time, Margaret Chin, to vote no in approving the borough-based jail plan. Sadly, she supported it. And sadly, when we were campaigning and candidate for mayor, Eric Adams, was standing literally to my left, saying he was not going to build a jail at this site. We believed in him, we supported him, and we hoped for the best. The first day in office, he turned his back on this community. And if you see what has happened in every other borough to council members who decided not to fight, they're in the construction phase. The reason why there isn't a jail, a mega jail here in Chinatown, is because the people in this room and people in my office and myself have continued to organize and push back every single step of the way. We filed lawsuits, we filed 2 different lawsuits that have given us pause, and not only given us pause, but given us more information. We have had rallies where we had 2,000 people take over the streets of Chinatown to demand the stoppage of this mega jail. We have met with small business owners who have already been affected right next to the jail. We went to Chong Pak and met with every single senior resident and educated them about the health effects that are going to come from the construction of this site. Our mobilization, our action has not only paused the demolition of this jail, it has given us an opportunity to fight for things that we want at that site and as adaptive reuse. And so 2 years in this fight as an elected official, if the fight is not over, and even this past week we have met with the administration and continue as we've done to push for adaptive reuse.
Not everybody sort of had an opportunity to express themselves. Well, I'm going to raise your blood pressure a little bit. As you know, there have been a whole lot of questions from a whole lot of folks, and we couldn't ask very many questions because of that many. So we'll just have a lightning round of yes/no questions. And we will just continue to go around. We'll start with Mr. Marte, we'll just keep going around. Yes/no questions, quick answers. Start. Do you support congestion pricing?
With an exemption to local residents.
Yes, no, please. The question is, do you support congestion pricing?
Not in its current form.
Yes, no, please. Enough.
It's more nuanced.
Sleep.
You avoided the question.
No. No.
Okay. Do you support landlords conducting criminal background checks on tenants? Mr. Marte?
No.
Yes. Yes.
Do you support outdoor street dining? Mr. Marte?
No.
No. No.
Do you support increasing the number of charter schools?
No.
No. Yes.
Do you support the involuntary moving of homeless persons to shelters?
That's what.
Can you repeat the question? I want to make sure I got it right.
Do you support the involuntary moving of homeless persons to shelters?
No.
No. Yes.
Do you support senior citizens' access to affordable housing and necessary social services?
Of course.
Most definitely.
Yes.
Unanimity, I like that. Do you support the increased funding for food pantries?
We have and we will. Yes.
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 Do you support continuing specialized high schools?
Yes.
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 And lastly, do you support the expansion of gifted and talented programs?
I think the current form is fine.
Yes, no, please.
Yes.
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 Okay, great.
Rikers Island! We can call Rikers Island.
All right, so look, candidates, now that you've had an opportunity to get your blood pressure raised,
Close Rikers
we
Island.
now have an opportunity for each of you
Keep
to
Rikers Island
provide.
open.
Now we have an opportunity for each of you to provide a closing statement, and I will start from this end of the room.
I really want to thank all of you for your time. As a first-time candidate, these sort of situations can be very stressful and overwhelming, and you've made it as easy as possible. I just want to close by saying that I want to reaffirm my stance on public safety, on high-quality education, and on supporting our small businesses. I can be very organized, as you can see from all my tabs, and I can be the hardest working person in the room, and I'm a great listener. And I hope that this is not the last of our conversations, even though it's the first one. Thank you.
Thank you.
I am running for city council because nothing has changed since the last time I ran in 2021. As a matter of fact, conditions have gotten worse. If there is any doubt about how I will conduct myself in office, please look at how I run my campaign. My staff is an extension of my office. They are its representative. We need a leader who will make tough choices without being compromised. I want to restore what is great about our city, where children will have quality education, play in the parks that are safe and clean, where our seniors can age in place in the communities that they raise their family and help build, where small businesses can thrive and support our local economy, and where we can have open dialogue without being extreme in our views. And lastly, I will listen to your concerns, but ultimately, I am your public servant.
Thank you, Ms. Lee.
First of all, I want to thank everyone for being here. The host, Don, always the champion of our community, the real winner of tonight. We came into office in this district was in a bit of a mess. We had a proposed jail that was months away from being demolished and built. There was 4 luxury towers that were planned for the Two Bridges neighborhood. There was rats all over our streets. There was lack of investment in what our community needed. And in just 1 year, we've been able to turn the tide. We've been able to build and lay out a new foundation for our community. We've been able to stop these 4 mega towers that are going to displace thousands of residents that lived in Section 8 and public housing on the Lower East Side. We've been able to put a veto on the worst parts of the Soho-NoHo rezoning, which would impact the northern part of Chinatown. We've been able to expand street sweeping throughout our district. We've been able to fully fund the Department of Sanitation so they could do their job that they've been doing so well this past first year. We've been able to work with our community-based organization. I've seen Don on Grand Street handing out meals to people that desperately need it. I've been able to meet the seniors that take advantage of the programs from Hamilton Madison down to University Settlement and Henry Street Settlement. We've been able to advocate with leaders at CACF to make sure that our nonprofit organizations are getting the funding that they need. We've been able to put the building blocks to take our community to where we all know it can go. Whether it's planting 100 new trees in our district, opening up 2 new parks, and building 100% affordable housing. We have done so much in just 1 year. Imagine what we can do with the opportunity of 2 more. And so I want to thank you, but more importantly, I want to ask for your vote tonight. Because a vote is not just to keep me in office, it's to keep our community forward. Thank you.
Let me thank candidates for your very candid and informative responses tonight. I wish all of you the best of luck. Audience, I'd like you to give our candidates a great round of applause. Before we leave, I'd like to thank G-Log for being our timekeeper this evening.
Thank you, Chair.
And of course to the Chinese Consolidated Benevolent Association for hosting this event, and to UA3 for doing it. And mostly I'd like to thank all of you for being a very respectful and attentive audience tonight. Please have a safe trip going home. Thank you.
And there is a 4th candidate that'll be running in the general election. That's Helen Q. She will see one of you guys in the general election. So thank you guys. Thank you, Ron. Thank you, candidates.